Okay, so replacing one type of cryptographic signature with a quantum-safe one makes it 52 times larger. 52. That's not a rounding error, that's a regime change.
And that size difference is precisely what breaks everything. It's not a theoretical problem.
The wild thing is, the signature we're talking about replacing is 64 bytes. The new one is 3,309 bytes. Your browser does this handshake billions of times a day across the whole web. You do the math.
And we're not talking about some distant future scenario. NIST finalized the new post-quantum standards in August 2024. They're done. The algorithms exist. The infrastructure just hasn't caught up.
Right. So what we're actually looking at is a transition problem, not a research problem. The math is solved. The deployment is the crisis.
Okay, so let's back up 1 second. What even is certificate transparency? Because I think most people hear PKI auditability and their eyes glaze over.
So every time a website gets an SSL certificate, the thing that makes the padlock show up in your browser, it gets logged in a public ledger. That's certificate transparency. It's how you catch fraudulent certificates before they do damage.
Google's Argonne and Xenon logs alone process over 1 billion entries per year. It's not a small system. Every entry gets a cryptographically signed timestamp, a signed certificate timestamp, an SCT. And right now, every single one of those signatures uses ECDSA P256.
Which is quantum vulnerable.
Which is quantum vulnerable. As of Q2 2026, yes.
So the whole auditing layer that's supposed to be the safety net for web trust, still running on an algorithm that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer could break.
Okay, this is where it gets crazy to me. The fix that everyone agrees on technically is called lattice-based aggregate signatures, and the idea is beautiful. Instead of replacing one big signature with one even bigger signature, you collapse multiple signatures into a single short proof.
Like many certificates, one compact signature that covers all of them.
Exactly. Aggregation is described as the only known path that keeps the TLS handshake budget intact while going post-quantum. Without it, you're just shoving 3 kilobytes into a protocol that was designed around 64 bytes.
And that's still mostly a research frontier. There's real university funding. Washington, Berkeley, UT Austin, Colorado Boulder. We're tracking nearly $4 million in federal funding just in the documented floor. But productization? That's just starting.
There was a Japanese patent, JP7816X from B2, filed in February 2026, describing hybrid post-quantum and classical certificate handling. That's the first commercial-grade IP signal that big players are actually building toward this.
A patent is a meaningful signal. Someone decided this was worth protecting commercially, which means someone thinks it's worth building.
Dumb smart question. Why does it matter if quantum computers can break these signatures? Like, quantum computers that can actually do this don't exist yet, right?
Harvest now, decrypt later. You don't need the quantum computer today. An adversary can scoop up encrypted traffic, or in this case, certificate logs, right now, store them, and crack them retroactively once the hardware exists.
For certificate transparency specifically, the concern is a compromised audit trail. If you can forge or retroactively manipulate the signatures on log entries, you can cover up fraudulent certificates that were issued. The whole point of CT is tamper-evident public record.
So the stakes aren't just someone reads your traffic someday. It's the mechanism we built to catch certificate fraud becomes untrustworthy. That's a different category of bad.
And there's a hard government deadline here. CNSA 2.0, the NSA's Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite. U.S. national security systems have to support post-quantum signatures by 2027, exclusive use by 2033.
That 2027 date is 18 months away. And browser vendors, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Edge, have CT enforcement policies tied to certificate lifecycle decisions that are coming up in 2026-2027 budget cycles. These aren't distant deadlines.
The wild thing is that the research geography here is interesting. The US dominates. 50 of 154 mapped research artifacts, but 49% of sources are from unknown or unlabeled origins. That's a big blind spot.
China shows up at about 3% of tracked sources, which could feel low given how seriously they're known to take post-quantum investment. It might mean the real work is happening in places we're not seeing.
Or it maps to classification. A lot of the most aggressive PQC work in sensitive contexts doesn't show up in public funding records.
So what's the actual crunch point here? Like, what's the decision that has to happen?
Browser vendors have to decide when to enforce PQCT. If Chrome sets a deadline, every CT log operator has to comply or get distrusted. That's a hard forcing function, and it triggers a cascade. Log operators, certificate authorities, enterprise PKI teams, everyone moves at once.
And right now, the aggregate signature schemes that would make this feasible are still being developed. You've got them all to say finalized, but the aggregation layer on top of it, that's still open research in 2026 with no IETF or CA browser forum standard yet.
So we're in this gap where the quantum threat is real. The standards for the base algorithms are done, but the specific piece that makes the infrastructure actually deployable is still being figured out. That's the window.
Which is exactly why the nearly $4 million in tracked federal funding and a Japanese patent grant in February are both meaningful signals. People are racing to own that aggregation layer.
Whoever figures out deployable lattice-based aggregate signatures at CT log scale, if it gets there, that's infrastructure-level leverage over how the whole web validates trust.
That's not a small thing. Certificate transparency is basically the immune system for web PKI. You compromise that. You compromise the mechanism that's supposed to catch everything else.
And the clock is running. 2027 for NSS compliance, 2033 for full migration. Those dates are going to arrive whether the aggregation problem is cleanly solved or not.
My read is, watch the browser vendor policy announcements in the next 6 to 12 months. Chrome's CT policy in particular. That's the tripwire.
Yeah, and watch the patent filings. That JP patent in February was the first commercial IP signal. If you start seeing more of those, especially from the big CA players or the hardware security module vendors, that tells you the research is about to become product.
Full research is at KPsphere.com. 152 sources, 89 papers, the funding breakdown, all of it. This one goes deep.
Worth the read if you're anywhere near web infrastructure, enterprise security, or PKI policy.
We'll be back with another signal. Later.
Later.
Later.